Welcome, everybody, to the Indiana Football Weekly Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Indiana Football Weekly is brought to you by BetNow.eu for a promo code on your first cashback deposit. Use the promo code TRUTH100. I'm Mike Froggy Goodpaster, and right now I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Cole Hanna. How you doing, Cole?
I'm doing pretty good, Mike. It doesn't feel good to be back to talking about a couple losses in a row here, but it's Thanksgiving, so I can't complain too much. I'm doing all right.
All right, Indiana is now 7-4. At the start of the year, I'd have probably been all right with that, but at this moment, not so much. Not after the Michigan Wolverines took the Hoosiers to the woodshed, beating them 39-14 last Saturday. And of course, the old Oaken Bucket game will be next. And the thing I took away from this game was the Indiana secondary was absolutely scorched on this game, or on this day. The Wolverines had a field day with the Hoosiers secondary, producing six passes that went for longer than 20 yards, the longest being a 75-yard touchdown by junior wide receiver Nico Collins, on which IU safety Juwan Burgess seemed to take a bad angle. Now, there seems to be a lot of bad angles on this defense. And, it seemed to me like IU played a lot of man and just couldn't cover him. And if you're playing man and you can't get pressure on the quarterback, which they couldn't, you're going to lose.
Yeah, it was. Coming into the game, I was thinking, okay, what we need to do is we need to limit that Michigan rushing attack. Cause really, in recent weeks, when Michigan's been playing so well, it's been the rushing attack that had really become a key weapon of this offense. And Indiana did a great job stopping the run. I mean, Michigan runs the ball 29 times, 87 yards. That's just 3 yards a carry. So they did a good job of stopping the run for the most part. But the secondary was just downright awful. And they couldn't cover anyone. And like you said, they had no pass rush at all on Shea Patterson all throughout the game. And, and the Michigan offensive line, to give them a little bit of credit, they are very, very good at giving Shea Patterson a clean pocket, or at least in recent weeks. They've been very, very good at doing that. But the secondary was awful. It really seemed like the safeties, and a lot of times, were getting matched up with guys in the slot and one-on-one man coverage. Whether that was Juwan Burgess or Bryant Fitzgerald or whoever it was, they just seemed to get absolutely, embarrassed a lot of times. A lot of times it was you're throwing to 10 to 15 yards as the closest defender away from the receiver, and it just was not good. And obviously, when you look at Patterson's stats, they pretty much tell the whole story. It goes for 366 yards and 5 touchdowns in the game. The secondary is awful. It reminded me a lot of the Michigan State games at times where it just seemed like big play after big play after big play was coming in the passing game. And I think it was a little bit of a wake-up call for the Indiana defense that clearly they were not up to par against this team. And, shout out to Shea Patterson, because I thought he made some unbelievable throws in his own right. And really, he was playing very, very well for Michigan all game long. And the secondary just was getting absolutely destroyed all game long. And even when they were playing some okay or good coverage, Patterson found a way to make a perfect throw and get it in there. So it was just the Indiana defense was simply not up to task in this game, especially the secondary. It was, in my opinion, an embarrassing effort for this defense.
Well, see, I think the defensive line is up for this just as much as the secondary because, like I said, when you play man, if you can't get after the quarterback, you're not going to win. And my question is this. When you're the Indiana Hoosiers, you do not have the talent level yet that the Michigan Wolverines have. So what makes you think you could play man coverage and beat them?
Yeah, I think obviously they could have utilized a little bit more zone schemes. And I think that would have helped. But the issue is, I guess, with Michigan, you've got to get pressure on the quarterback at some point, whether you're playing man or zone. Because even if you're going to play zone, you let them just sit back there and let receivers come open in that zone. I think they still would have had success in the passing game. Because it wasn't like, he was throwing the ball as defenders were coming at him. I mean, it was a clean pocket. You're talking 3 or 4 seconds after he had dropped back to pass. I mean, there were very few plays in which Indiana was even close to getting.
But how about this real quick, Cole? If I'm playing zone and I'm mixing zones up, then maybe Shea Patterson will have more of a difficult time, which will maybe lead to a little indecision. And with playing a cover 2 or a cover 3 zone against these guys, it gives you better angles to make the tackles, and maybe you can limit the explosive plays because football games are won by turnovers and explosive plays. And what they did was when you're in man, you're basically saying I can get to the quarterback and cause turnovers. If you're in zone, you can limit the explosive plays at least.
Yeah, and that certainly could have been an option. I'm not going to necessarily disagree that they shouldn't have utilized some more zone coverages. Because, I mean, clearly that the man-to-man coverage schemes they were running were just not working. And, you know, I guess probably the mindset from Indiana was for the most part this season, this had not been an explosive passing game that had really come out and dominated, at least so far this season. Now, Shea Patterson had been playing well recently, and there's no doubt about that, and he had stepped up his game. And he was coming off probably his best game of the year, maybe arguably his best game of his career last week against Michigan State. But for the most part, it had not been a passing game that has been lighting up opponents. I'm sure the Indiana mindset was, you know, we can play these guys man-to-man and stop that running attack. And, you know, so I guess that would be my guess as to why they were utilizing these man-to-man schemes when you bring up the talent differences, because what this had not been what that team had been doing all year long was dominating teams in the passing game. That had been something we really had not seen from Michigan. Really, in the last 4 or 5 weeks when they were at their best, it was with the ground and pound attack. When they really kind of dominated Notre Dame, it was the ground and pound. It wasn't Shea Patterson throwing for 400 yards a game, but against Michigan State, Shea Patterson proved he was able to do that, and he carried up that effort, you know, with arguably an even better game against against Indiana, and was able to do that. So, I don't think, looking back, I don't think there's any doubt Indiana needed to utilize some more zone schemes or something to take away the big plays in the passing game, because man-to-man, they just weren't able to do it. But I think Indiana was probably banking that the Shea Patterson we've seen for most of his career that doesn't put up these huge explosive numbers in the passing game, that was the guy they were going to see. But clearly that was not the guy they got. Shea Patterson was, you know, on the money all game long.
Yeah, in the last 2 games, they've been more of a passing team. 3 games ago, I think they ran for over 300 yards in the game they won. I think it was against Notre Dame. Ever since then, they've been a passing team. They can do either. Michigan's a very talented team. I think Michigan could beat Ohio State. I'm one of the few people in the world that think that, but I think Michigan's playing just about as good as anybody right now. But Tom Allen, we go back to that now. You're 7-4. You've beaten no teams that are worth a damn. This is the same as always to me, other than they beat a couple more 500 teams than what they usually beat. And, you know, I don't think there's any chance that they're going to lose Tom Allen somewhere. But I would really like to see them replace Tom Allen with Kalen DeBoer.
Well, that's going to be the conversation. And you're not the first guy I've seen bring that up, because you assume Kalen DeBoer is going to get some head coaching opportunities this offseason. That's someone's. I don't know if it's going to be a Power 5 school. I don't know if he's going to leave, but you would think after what he's been able to do with this Indiana offense that someone's going to come up with an offer to at least give him a head coaching opportunity, whether it's in a MAC school or at a lesser school or even a Power 5 school. Someone's going to approach him with that offer. How about this
one? I got one for you. It's not a Power 5 school, but would pay a lot more money than Indiana does, especially to be the coordinator. There's
Cincinnati.
Conversation now that Memphis could lose their coach to Florida State. I mean, Memphis is a better job than IU. They're a better football program. They pay better. I mean, I don't think that's beyond comprehension. Something like that could happen.
No, I mean, certainly, you know, the Florida State coaching search is going to be very, very interesting to see. And, I think even Tom Allen, there was a report out today that Tom Allen was being vetted as a possible candidate for the Florida State job.
Don't vet him until they watch some film.
Yeah, I don't think there's any chance of Tom Allen leaving for Florida State. You know, and I think that goes both ways. I don't think Florida State's going to approach Tom Allen as one of their leading candidates, and I don't think Tom Allen would take the job. I think he wants to be
come on. Tom Allen would take the job. They could pay him 5 times what IU pays him.
I don't think Florida State's not going to approach Tom Allen with an $8 or $9 million offer.
But I guarantee you this: if Florida State offered Tom Allen $5 million a year, Tom Allen's living in Tallahassee. But we can only dream.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm as low on Tom Allen as you. I still think I completely agree. I understand the sentiment of, you know, really this team does not have any program-changing wins. When you look up and down their resume, I mean, they've really only beaten one possible bowl team. When you look at Nebraska is really the only team on their schedule that maybe could go to a bowl game. They're playing Iowa right now to decide if they go to a bowl game. But outside of that, you have 0 really bowl team wins on the schedule right now. And I do understand that their losses have not necessarily been against great teams or against bad teams. Really, Michigan State's probably the only, I guess, quote unquote, bad loss. It's probably
They're a
going to end
bad
up with
team.
a 6-6 football team. Yeah, they're not a great football team. Your other losses are to Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State. So, I definitely think there's some disappointing play, and I think how you lost to Michigan is far more disappointing than the fact that you did lose to Michigan, because I thought that was a game Indiana could at least keep it close and make it a challenge, and it was Michigan was clearly just far above Indiana. But at the same time, you have a great chance of being 8-4 at the end of the year, and this is Indiana football. Last time we've been 8-4, it's been a long, long time, and yeah, they haven't beaten any great teams, but they've beaten teams on the road, and it doesn't matter if it's a 5-win team or a 6-win team. There haven't been many Indiana football
They
teams
got a
that have
chance
been
to
able
be
to win
an
those
8-win
games.
team because Purdue, Maryland, and Nebraska are all a lot worse than what they were.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no doubt about it. The schedule has helped Indiana get to the point to where they're 8-4. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But at the same time, I think Indiana's kind of had to deal, with some own issues of their own. I mean, they're playing with a backup quarterback right now. I think that you have to factor that in as well. Because I think when you look at this Michigan game, I thought you kind of saw the limitations you have with a Peyton Ramsey-led offense versus what a Michael Penix-led offense gives you. I think that's part of the reason Indiana struggled so much in that game. But at the same time, I get that you're not beating world beaters at any point. Like, Indiana's wins are not the most impressive wins you're ever going to see. But it's still looking at 7 wins with the potential that should be 8 wins on the season. I just think if you're an Indiana football fan, to turn your nose up at 8 wins, I don't know when the expectations got that high for this team. I don't think they should be that high for this team, at least right away. I think if you're looking at 8 wins, you told me before the season they win 8 games. They don't beat any great teams, but they win 8 games. I'm taking that. That's 5 Big Ten wins for Indiana. That almost never happens. We very rarely see Indiana win more than 1 or 2 games in the Big Ten, regardless of who they play. And that always includes some losses to some pretty mediocre football teams. And that's, I think, one of the key differences this season is Indiana's winning against mediocre Big Ten teams versus finding ways to lose those games. And that might not be as flashy as beating the top-end Big Ten teams. And I don't think there's any doubt those wins against top-end Big Ten teams need to come at some point for Tom Allen's job to be safe. But at the end of the day, for an Indiana football team to win 8 games, to win 5 Big Ten games, they need to get some credit for that regardless of who they play. They're Big Ten teams, and if they're able to win 5 Big Ten games in 1 year, I think you should still be able to look at that and be satisfied that the team's moving in the right direction. And, it's still going to be, in my opinion, a successful year, even if they didn't win any of the big fish games against Penn State, Michigan, or Ohio State.
Will you feel that way if they lose to Purdue?
Now, if they lose to Purdue, I think that's a different discussion.
It's still 7 wins, and at the start of the year, you'd have been happy with it.
I don't want to say it would be a disappointing season or a failure of a season, but it would leave a bad taste in your mouth. It would be the 3rd straight year they've lost in the rivalry game to Purdue. It would be Purdue with a 3rd-string quarterback with no running game or no ability to stop the run, and what is looking to be some pretty terrible weather conditions. I think that would be alarming if you were to somehow drop that game for the 3rd consecutive year. I don't want to hit the panic button and say, the season's a failure and they're 7-5, but they lost to Purdue. But to end the season with 3 consecutive losses, 2 of those in very disappointing fashion, referring to Michigan and Purdue, and it would always depend, okay, who do they get in the bowl game? How do they perform in the bowl game? Because they'd still have another game to play to finish out the season. But I think to lose to Purdue, drop the old Oaken bucket for the 3rd consecutive year on a Purdue team that frankly just isn't very good when you look at and especially when you look at the advantage in the trenches should be in Indiana's favor on both sides of the football with a 3rd-string quarterback at Purdue, to drop that game at the end of the year, I think you'd be having a slightly different discussion. I don't want to say it makes the season a complete failure, but it definitely starts to bring a lot more doubt onto the season, in my opinion.
Well, with Tom Allen, I think for Tom Allen, he's done a great job this season. As an Indiana fan, I don't see how it ever gets better than this with Tom Allen because I think a team follows the personality of its leader, and I don't think there's a lot of toughness there. And the other thing that I see is it seems like for 3 years, the team gets worse at the end of the season. You watch a team coached by Jim Harbaugh, which I know a lot of people give him crap, but that team has gotten immeasurably better over the last month. And I don't see that in any of Tom Allen's seasons.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair critique, and it's clearly you can argue that this was probably coming off this Michigan game, Indiana's worst performance of the season, that or the Ohio State game.
Well, Ohio State's just that much better than them. Michigan is too. My problem.
I think Michigan has a chance to, like you said, just to go off about talking about Michigan. I think they have a chance to at least make it a game against Ohio State. I think with how they're playing right now, they're playing some very good football and the best football of the season. But I agree with you that Indiana has seemingly never really, I guess, played their best football at the end of the year under Tom Allen's any of his 3 straight years. But I guess my only critique to that would be before those 2 games. I thought Indiana played 2 games ago, arguably their best performance of the season when they, dominated Northwestern 34-3. I thought they played pretty well against Penn State the week before. I mean, they had a very legitimate chance to win that game outside of some boneheaded mistakes they made. And then obviously the Michigan game was super disappointing. No doubt about it. So I guess I want to see how this Purdue game goes and how this bowl game goes after the Purdue game to really kind of judge how Indiana did at the end of the year. Because there's no doubt this is the most disappointing performance of the season in Ohio State. And you can justify why, but it's still very disappointing performances in games that Indiana really kind of even make into much of a contest. But how they perform in the Purdue game and even the bowl game after that, I think will tell a lot about this team. Because I don't think they've necessarily been awful in the year before the Michigan game, but the Michigan game definitely leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Well, I think this. When we look at Purdue, this is a game Indiana should dominate. And they should dominate it physically. So yeah. I expect to see a 24-3, a 31-10 win. And if this is a 24-20 game, I'm disappointed. Because I want to see this team at some point up front be able to dominate somebody. They got dominated against Michigan. Purdue is a team that they should dominate. Purdue's 4-7. They put up a fight last week for about 3 quarters, maybe a half, against Wisconsin. Aiden O'Connell played well for a backup quarterback, 26 for 43, 289, 2 touchdowns. This is a game where if Indiana can limit the pass game, take away explosive plays, I don't think Purdue has the personnel to do too many 10, 15-play drives of 80 yards and scoring touchdowns.
Yeah, well, especially I think if the weather conditions are as they're expected to be, where you've got heavy wind and a lot of rain, that's a game I think that's going to favor a more ground and pound approach versus a team that's going to throw the ball around every play. And the issue with Purdue, and I think you said it, Indiana needs to physically dominate this game in the trenches, both sides of the ball. I mean, this is a Purdue team that has the worst rushing defense in the Big Ten and has the worst rushing attack in the Big Ten. They have 818 total yards rushing as a team. Indiana's Stevie Scott has more rushing yards than the entire Purdue team has combined. I mean, they're averaging 2.6 yards per carry as a team in the running game. I mean, they've been absolutely awful running the football, and they haven't really shown the ability to stop the run either. Going back, it's according to Pro Football Focus, it's the worst graded rushing defense in the Big Ten by a significant margin, and I think we saw that against Wisconsin where Jonathan Taylor absolutely diced them up, and the entire Wisconsin rushing attack. Now, granted, it's Wisconsin. They do that to a lot of teams. But still, they ran for over 400 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground as a team. So there's no excuse for Indiana to not dominate this game on the trenches on both sides of the football. I think Indiana's a significantly better team. I don't expect Rondale Moore to play in this game, and that's a huge weapon in their passing attack. Now, the freshman David Bell has played really, really well for them, and I think the freshman battle between Tewan Mullen and David Bell in the secondary could be very, very interesting to see how that goes. Because I thought Mullen kind of had a disappointing game against the Michigan team. So see how he bounces back against another premier freshman in the Big Ten. But like you said, Indiana is clearly the better team here on paper, should be the better team. Purdue's going to lose, I don't want to say they will, but they should lose this battle in the trenches by a significant margin. And I don't see how Purdue should keep this game close if Indiana's playing at their best. So kind of going back to what you're talking about, Tom Allen, how do they finish the year? Do they finish the year strong? This is a game they've lost back-to-back years. Before that, they'd won it, for 4 consecutive years. So Tom Allen needs to come and get this team back on track and get a win in this rivalry again and get the old Oaken Bucket back in Bloomington. And if Indiana plays well, this really should not be a close game.
Yeah, the only thing that worries me here is Purdue has the better football coach.
Yeah, well, I think Jeff Brom is – I know he's had a disappointing year, and there's been a lot of people hopping off his train. I still think he's a very good football coach.
He's a damn good football coach. They've had a lot of things go wrong there. But the last 6 games of the season, they've been 3-3. They blew out Maryland, but who doesn't outside of Rutgers? They only lost by 6 at Iowa. They did get manhandled by Illinois. And I think it needs to be brought up what a job Lovie Smith's done there, because when that program, they were trying to run him out of there, but that program was worse than Indiana's been in forever, I think. Then they beat Nebraska at home. They beat Northwestern at Northwestern, and they played Wisconsin tough last week. So I expect this to be a relatively close game. I think Indiana wins it something like 27-17.
Yeah, I think Indiana should be able to win this game probably by, I guess I go a little bit more significant than you. I'd probably go Indiana 31, Purdue 17. I do think it needs to be brought up that I guess we'll check on the status of Stevie Scott before this game. He's kind of been the go-to back all season long for Indiana. There really hasn't been another back that's gotten significant carries on this team, and his status is up in the air after suffering an injury against Michigan. So we'll see if he plays this week. But if he can't go, Samson James is the next guy behind him in terms of yardage that they've been able to attain this season. He's just ran for 132 yards. So after Stevie Scott, there's been a big drop-off at the tailback position. And if he can't go, that could affect some things. But even regardless of that, I still think Indiana has way more talent. They have clearly what should be the more physical side in the trenches. So I would go 31-17 Indiana.
Yeah, I think the offensive line is the bigger deal here than who runs the ball. If the offensive line dominates up front, I think whoever Indiana's got that's a scholarship running back should have a 100-yard rushing game. All right, so I guess we're both picking IU, and then we can do an exciting Red Box Bowl preview show or something against California or Washington.
I'm hoping personally I would love to see a Music City Bowl in Nashville against an SEC team or something like that. I think that would be a cool game to get for Indiana.
You want to go to that. That's only like 4 or 5 hours away.
Oh, I think if they get in Nashville, I think I'm definitely going to go to that, or at least try to go to it. It would be a
well, we can get credentials for the Music City Bowl without a problem.
Oh yeah, then I would love to do that. Hopefully it's hopefully they can get in that bowl game. I know a lot of people, like you said, are predicting.
I don't really know if I'd want to drive 4 or 5 hours to watch Indiana play football right now, though.
Well, that's a legitimate gripe. I can't really blame you too much for that one. But I definitely don't want to go across the country to somewhere like California to watch them play.
No, I don't want to go to California to watch anything because people that live in California are idiots normally.
Yeah. I think I'm right there behind you. I really don't want to do that
Even
either.
People that used to live in Indiana that moved to California, it seems to me the only thing they do is talk about how warm it is. They never really say anything else.
Yeah. I think I know exactly what you're talking about there. And, I don't even know why the Red Box Bowl would take them anyway.
I don't know what the hell a Red Box Bowl is. What's Red Box?
I honestly, it's like the movie company.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, the movie thing. They got one of them at Kroger's where you rent a movie for $1.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. But then you got to take it back. I'm just glad that DVDs and VHS tapes went away, basically, all the stores, because I think, every VHS or movie store that they had here, I probably owe each one thousands of dollars because I'd go rent a movie and then I'd forget, and 3 months later I find the movie and say, oh, I should have taken this back. But luckily they all went out of business, so.
So now you don't have to worry about returning.
Yeah, I got 6 or 7 free movies here. It's kind of like the library. I got lucky though because the library I used to rent books from burnt down, so.
You seem to have gotten off the hook in both of those instances.
Oh, yeah. So it worked out great. No, before anybody says anything, I had nothing to do with it.
You're completely innocent.
Yeah, I mean, I had books from like 1985 when that library burnt down 5 years ago. I probably owed them like $3.5 million or something. But
And completely unrelated fire. Nothing to do, nothing on your
yeah,
end.
because I never even thought about doing something like that. I mean, maybe if I'd have thought about it, but I didn't think about it. But all right, Cole, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna wrap this monstrosity of a show up because Indiana could be headed to the Red Box Bowl or the Music City Bowl, where an SEC team will beat them to death.
Unfortunately,
Can
yeah,
we play
those seem like
Alabama
your
if they lose to Auburn? Indiana and Alabama, I'd go see.
I would see it. I guess you'd have to see it. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity to watch your team get
Beaten to
steamrolled at the
death
hands of
by
Alabama.
Ah, hell, Cole. All right, tell everybody where they can find you on that internet thing.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at ColeHanna5. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, and don't forget, hashtag Fire Tom Allen. All right, guys, we're going to wrap the show up. You can hear all the Grueling Truth shows on thegruelingtruth.com, Spreaker, iTunes, Spotify. We're now on Deezer, whatever the hell that is. Podcast Addict, I don't know what that is either, but if you listen to those places, you can get us on The Grueling Truth. But basically, anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can find The Grueling Truth. So for Cole Hanna, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.